being able to do $40,000 a month at a gym in 2,000 square feet with 100 members, of course, let's do that. There's almost zero franchises that are doing small group personal training. This is the only way to make money in the fitness industry.
Finally have the guy that I've been trying to get on the show for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. We've been back and forth in communication on phone calls. He's had a lot going on. He's growing his business like crazy. And you're going to hear today really about what's going on in the small group. It's a topic that I've been discussing for a little bit. Obviously, it's a little bit of a passion of mine. I just came from another event where we talked about small group. And really, the guy that I got on the show is a guy who knows this intimately and teaches it intimately. And he's been growing his business to a level where you probably want to pay attention because he's got a lot of the right answers to help you get your business moving. Today, I've got Gabriel on the show. Vince, thanks for joining, man.
Mike, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. So what is that, a Live Lucky hat?
Yeah, this is a Tony Robbins thing. Vanessa and I went to his Date with Destiny program probably 2 months before COVID.
Yeah.
So we were fine during COVID. No, I'm totally kidding, but it definitely helped. We always say that it definitely helped doing that. But yeah, this is I don't think it's his. He owns it, but I think he just wears these hats a lot too. So.
Yeah, no, I've been to a couple of his events. Date with Destiny, what is that, like 4-day event?
I think it's 5. 5. It was.
You don't remember? It was just.
It was like till 3 a.m. Like we started at like probably like 10 o'clock in the morning and they ended at like 3 or 4.
You guys nuts.
Every day.
Walk across the hot coals?
No, that's UPW. Okay. So you don't do that at Date with Destiny.
Yeah. Anything cool? What was it cool?
Honestly, relationship day.
Yeah.
It was really cool that we went together. But it was we learned some things during that day that we still take with us. And I can't say it like completely transformed our marriage like by any means, but it was definitely, we got tools that we still use today that, you know, have really been effective. And so it was incredible.
Not that the topic today is about marriage and relationships, but I'll tell you, you know, having gone through, like when you first get married, you first get in a relationship, it's always like, you know, rainbows and sunshine and butterflies and things are perfect. And as you start traversing down this course, all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I have other responsibility now. I've got 4 kids, and there's so much more that goes on, and you start kind of dividing your time because you have to like work together to get all these things done. So I think things like that are super important because you hone in on time together to figure out like what's valuable between us and how can we work together to make our lives superior to the point where we were at in the beginning, you know?
Yeah, no, I often say that your relationship with your significant other is like your most important business relationship.
Oh yeah.
Because like if that's off track, like man, everything. Yeah, everything's gonna be off track.
So you also have, and I often talk about sales. Like you have to be good at sales. If you want to find someone to be with, you got to be able to sell them on the idea that they should be with you.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of like the foundation of sales. I think everybody has that little bit of sales in them or influence or persuasion in them, even at a young age, right? You want this cereal instead of that cereal. You got to tell your parents why. So same thing. You wrote a sales book. You wrote now 3 books. You've got this small group personal training book. Thank you for sending it to me. I've gone through it, and we're going to talk about some things on here.
Cool.
And then I wanted to get this point across because on the small group side, it is you reference 4 to 6. I've talked to Rick Mayo with Alloy. You know, he does, I think, up to 6 on his small group. You know, when I talked to Tim Lyons or been with Tim Lyons at his event, and they do up to 6. And then I looked at Thomas Plummer. He and I had a nice conversation, and he's like, go up to 4, don't go beyond that. He's got reasons for it. So first of all, why small group? I mean, group training, if you remember, and I'm sure you do, because you and I are probably around the same age. The big boot camps, like these Spartan boot camps, these huge training camps, you can profit with those pretty well. Why dive into this small group? I mean, you got the one-on-one training, you make good money on this, you make good money on the large group. Why get into this area?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think the first one is like, if you really look at it, almost everybody's doing large group, right? You know, look at, especially in the boutique space, right? It's all large group. It's, I can't say all, like there's no definitives, right? But like there's Orange Theory, there's F45, there's all these different models, and they all run a large group model. So it's like now you're going against people that, you know, are probably much more funded than you are, probably better systematized than you are. There are some advantages you may have as a mom and pop shop. That's what I am, right? That's what most of us are. But you're just kind of like putting yourselves in a market of many. And what I think small group does is it puts yourself in a market of very, very few. I mean, we talked about Rick. I mean, tell me another small group personal training franchise other than Alloy. You can't, like, I can't even name them. You know what I'm saying? So you're in a market, and again, in our world, Michael, our world, it's kind of like common, right? We've been doing this a while and stuff like that, but really in the grand scheme of the whole industry, it's not that common. There's almost zero, other than Rick, there's almost zero franchises that are doing small group personal training. So there's room for it. Plus, for me, the economics make so much sense. Like the fact of being able to do $40,000 a month at a gym in 2,000 square feet with 100 members is like, it's almost like, yeah, like of course, let's do that. Versus if you wanted to make that same money in a large group model, you got to have like, you know, close to 500 members, and you know, do the math on an attrition rate for 500 members at a 10% attrition rate, which is where like the large group, small group attrition is going to be a lot lower. But like the large group, it's like 10%, right? And so 500 members times 10%, you got a marketing problem. You got to reload, you know, every month. And so with small group, the retention rate is usually lower. You have less people, and you're able to make more money in a lot less space, right? And with a lot less staff, you
So
know, too. You don't need as much
you
staff.
mentioned in your book that the way to figure out your small group rate is multiply by 40%, right? So it's 40% of whatever your one-on-one rate is.
Yeah, I worked on this formula with Mike Waldron, who is the CFO for Carmel Valley Financial. He is Rick's guy. He's does the financials. He's like probably the first. So it's a funny story, really quickly. He's my best friend from high school, and he was a hedge fund guy. And he saw me in the gym. We grew up together. He would come to the gym all the time. We'd talk, and he started helping me with my books. And he was doing my books for me. He was doing some stuff, and all of a sudden he's like, I hate being a freaking hedge fund person. Like this sucks going into New York City every day. And he moved to California and started doing my stuff full time and started taking on small gyms. And now he has probably over 150 gyms in the space in just this our small training space. And he does the financials in the books for them.
Wow.
He's like, yeah, it's a phenomenal person. Carmel Valley Financial, phenomenal person. It's a game changer to know your numbers and to know the data. But so I worked on this formula with Mike, and basically what we did was like, for one-on-one, everyone has a good grasp of what one-on-one is.
Were you at one-on-one before you came up with this formula? That's all
yeah,
you were doing?
Yeah. I was doing one-on-one in my mom's basement before I opened my gym. So I would train, you know, clients in my mom's basement. I would train kids on fields, one-on-one. And
Tommy's
my first
here.
5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. My first 5 years of training, I was at a gym in San Diego. Well, look, are you guys in San? Where are you guys located? Oh, you're in Florida. Okay. But my first 5 years in San Diego was one-on-one after one-on-one after one-on-one, and I just got fried and burnt from it. So anyway, the one-on-one is kind of like people are understanding of that rate, right? If they don't do it themselves, they kind of know how much a session is over the course of that. So I kind of figured everyone's kind of undercharging,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I said, I think in the book it's 10%. So I said, whatever your one-on-one rate is, just raise it 10%. So if you're at 90, raise it roughly
Mm-hmm.
$10 and get to 100. And then take your rate and multiply it by 40 to 60%. 40, if you're in the lower income area, 60 if you're in the higher. It usually works out pretty good. It's not a perfect system by any means, but it usually works out pretty good to give yourself a good price where you can end up making 250, 300 per hour. And that's what I push a lot of my guys to make, pending they're in the right area. They're around 200 to 15, 250 bucks, $250 to $300 an hour. And some of them can do two of those at once. So you're making $600 an hour. You're paying a trainer $30 an hour, two trainers $30 an hour. So your payroll's 60 and your revenue is 600. I'll take that.
So when you're going through this, like, I come from the one-on-one space, right? I did this stint with, I don't know if I call it small group or team training or semi-private training, but in one of my clubs, we allocated, this is like 2016, we allocated our studio and we completely revamped our studio and turned it into kind of like a small group space. You could fit in like maybe up to 12 or 15 people in there. And it was still a little large, but we would always maybe have no more than 10. And I was getting my feet wet with this idea and this concept, and I wasn't doing it right. But I was trying to break into that space, and I had a gym. So my gym had members. We were 24-hour access, all three clubs. And we were, pumping out memberships, pumping out one-on-one training like crazy. The hard thing with one-on-one training, as you know, is like keeping great trainers. And then if they do leave, keeping the clients. So I think semi-private or small group, whatever you want to name it, it helps that category. It prevents you from having to find so many more people that can actually serve your clients. And it also prevents the likelihood of those clients from leaving if a coach does leave. But the other challenge I found was I see clubs that are like designed for small group. Alloy's a perfect example. Like, it is intentional. That is what the franchise model is, and there's nothing else about it. But these other clubs that maybe want to take on small group, how the hell do they do it? Right? How would I have done it back then in 2015, 2016 to take a space and do it the right way? So that way I don't like just go spend a bunch of money on equipment and then not succeed at it. Because I would say I was probably not successful.
Couple things. When I hit the pandemic, we had a sports performance business, and it just couldn't keep up with the pandemic. Like, the parents were all over the place. Like, we couldn't, so we shut it down. And sports performance was like my kind of thing that I did. That's how I started in the industry. I started my business doing mostly sports performance and then went more towards adults. So I didn't really want to give it up, and I was reading a book called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. And right when I was reading that book, I had the idea that I wanted to start it to bring sports performance back to my business. Okay, so almost start envisioning the big box gym or the bigger gym, and they have different kind of things within that business. So my gym had adult personal training and sports performance. Sports performance went away. Now I'm bringing it back brand new. Okay. The first thing I did after I read this book, Who Not How, I didn't say, how am I going to get this program? How am I going to get new clients? How am I going to get more athletes in the door? The first thing I said is, who is the person that's going to run this program for me? And what I did was I went out and found a kid named Mike Mullen. And Mike, I played football at Temple. And just so happens that this kid played football at Temple. It's like so random and weird, right? So he was like right off the bat, like my kind of guy, right? Um, and it was like a match made in heaven. And I said, here's what I want to accomplish. I said, I want to grow this sports performance program. I want to get 100 to 150 kids a quarter. We're going to charge this much money. This is where kids are going to come from. This is the marketing plan. This is the name of the business. So I casted the vision. I created it for him. And I said, I need you to go do this. And that is exactly what has happened. So we launched Grit athlete performance in 2021. And it was so successful, we ended up licensing the entire thing and we're selling it to gyms all across the country. And so, but the point of this is, I think a lot of the bigger gyms that try to do it, they almost have to treat it like it is an alloy type thing, right? And alloys work because of the facility leader. Alloy works because there's one person that handles what I call the middle of the accountability chart. So org charts are marketing, sales, operations, finance. The facility leader or head of a program will handle sales and operations, meaning they're going to handle the conversions from the leads and they're going to handle the operations retention essentially, right? And so where I've seen it work is you find the who, you provide the who with the marketing, with the vision, with the finance, and then you say you are responsible for the sales of this and you are responsible for the operations of this, keeping clients, and you compensate them to the point where they're going to be motivated to grow this thing. And you can compensate them based on growth of overall numbers. So if you have 50 clients, you give them a base. Once they get to 70 clients, you give them a bonus on that. So you can kind of do it like that. But that's kind of how I've seen it work with businesses that are trying to make it work in an existing business. They got to find the person. If it's just some random trainer that you just stick in there that you're going to do small group training, it ain't going to work. You got to find the person that you can partner with. And I'm not saying partner on paper, like partner in a profit share, right? But partner with them and give them the guidance. So with Mike, the whole way I'm meeting with him, I'm giving him, guidance on how business and retention tools and all the sales techniques that I knew. And I would now almost become a coach of his. And so I think that they can make it work by finding the right person. And, I can't say that it's easy, right? I can't say that it's easy. So it's not like there's like a dozen people lining up to run your small group program. That is not true. But the job ad will help. The right job ad will help. And I've given this is my job ad for Mike. It's like historic. It's like all the guys in my mastermind are like, give me that job ad, give me that job ad. Right. And so I kind of built a whole template based on the job ad I used to get Mike. So a lot of it is, and job ads are marketing.
Oh yeah.
People don't realize that. Like that's marketing. Like when you sit down to write a job ad, you are marketing. And so that's how I think that's how it worked for me. That's how I've seen it work for a lot of guys in my group. So if someone's listening to this, then that's what they're struggling with. Maybe try that.
So you see these other clubs like Lifetime Fitness, right? Big box chain, Equinox, and you even see them doing small group, and they try and like segment it out as like a separate area, right? So is that kind of what is needed if you're running small group? Because my understanding, or at least my perception, is if I'm in your program, the philosophy is as much as you possibly can, make whatever you're doing small group, right? Try and eliminate the other variables of maybe private training or large group. Like just hone in on that. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the situation. Like if someone's doing big money, here's the thing. It all depends on, your current financial situation. If you're making big money with one-on-one, like there's not necessarily a need for you to just shut that down and do something else. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. They read my book or they hear about a new thing and they're not struggling. They're doing well. And so like a lot of times people maybe don't need to change anything. Right? I'm not saying like that this doesn't work. It does work. It works really, really well. But one-on-one could work really, really well. Large group can work really, really well. And if it is, like, don't change it. But if it's not, meaning if you're not making the amount of money that you want to make and you want a more profitable option version where you can make a large amount of money in a small amount of square footage with a small amount of trainers, yeah, this is a great model. But I'm not saying that this is the only way to make money in the fitness industry. There's lots of people that have made lots of money, you probably being one of them, with one-on-one, with big box gyms. So it really all depends on their situation.
Do you think it'll cannibalize one-on-one training? Like if I were to bring this in, right, running one-on-one, crushing it, right? But I got a lot of trainers and my margins aren't as what they could be with small groups. So in my mind, I'm going, I like to move to small group because my margins are better and I don't have to hire as many people and all these other things, all these benefits that come with it. Am I going to cannibalize the one-on-one training?
It could, but what you would do is raise the price of one-on-one. So the loss of clients wouldn't be as much of a financial loss. And so that's what I would do is I would raise the price of one-on-one to make more money with less people. And then the people that you would lose for one-on-one, some of them you might lose entirely, but the people that instead of losing them, you would move them to the small group program. So I think that can be, yes, from a number standpoint, maybe you lose from a volume, but from a money standpoint, if you raise the price, you should be in a good situation.
So the biggest challenge that I see is this, right? You've got the whole structure set up. You've got the layout in your facility set up. Okay. You have all these things in place. What is it that you feel, right? I've got my own belief on this. What is it you feel is going to be the biggest kind of danger zone? You write about, the seven, what was it? The seven killers, or what did you write?
The seven deadly sins.
Seven deadly sins. Yeah. See, I knew it was going to, something had to die. So I think there's possibly one other in there. What is it that you feel could be another impact player on small group? If not,
it's price. It's always price. Because if you don't price it right, and I see a lot of people do this all the time, is they do small group, but they price it like large group. And now it's just like you were charging $20 for large group. Now you're starting charging $25 for small group, but you only let 6 people in. It doesn't make any financial sense. So the biggest way to screw it up is to mess up the price. And that's why I like that kind of 250 to 300 mark, because it's very rare to get that kind of money in one-on-one. And you need a lot of people to make that kind of money for a large group session, right? And so that's why I feel like it's like a good sweet spot in terms of per hour. But yeah, because what are we doing? We're trying to make money. That's like, yeah, we're helping. I get the whole transform lives. That's why I'm doing it too. But at the end of the day, we're all also doing this to feed our families, right? And so I don't think that can be overlooked. And if you're financially strapped, it's not good for you. It's not good for your trainers, and it's not good for your clients. So price is the number one way to make a lot of money, and it's also the number one way to not make a lot of money. So if there's something to get right, if there's one thing to get right, you charge the right amount of money so you can make it well more than you would make in a one-on-one session. Because when people price it wrong, I just tell them, this is not going to work. Just do one-on-one, because now you only need to find one person to make $100 an hour. Now the way you've priced this, you got to find 5 people to make $100 an hour. This doesn't make any sense.
So what's the price point?
So just go do one-on-one.
What's the price point for one person for one session for small group with you?
$50.
Okay. So the reason why I asked that was because
at my gym,
and then the coach might get paid 30 or 40. So the range is enough to cover the pay for the coach. So do you?
Yep.
That's kind of like the big challenging point, I think, for a lot of gyms who want to implement this, because they go, well, I'm charging $25 for small group and I'm going to get 6 people in, or I'm charging $30, but I'm paying my coach 30 or 35, right? So if only one client shows up out of that group of 6, it now becomes a private session, and that person only paid, 25 or $30, and you're paying your coach, 30 to 35. Or in that scenario, you as you're coaching all these other guys and gals. Do you just tell them, no, just don't have the session? You have to have X number of people in a small group in order to have a session.
You got to look at it from an average standpoint. So one of the things that we track in our weekly scoreboard is usage, right? And this is like, out of how many possible sessions you could have, you are aware of the capacity, right? So we run at GFP at my gym, we run at roughly up to about a 75% capacity. So that means on average, and we're doing really well right now with this. So on average, we have 5 people out of 6 possible sessions, average across the board. That means we got a lot at 6 people, like packed out. Like we're having some issues in the morning sessions of getting people in. So you would want to pay attention to that number. I don't think you freak out if you have one session with one person. Sometimes people cancel,
Sure.
sometimes there's things that happen, right? But I think as long as you're aware and you have your finger on the pulse of your usage, I like to see, if you're 6 people, I like to see on average being around 4 out of 6 from a percentage standpoint on average. And if you're at 4 out of 6, that means you have a little room to grow in your current calendar. You can't really run 6 out of 6. So if you're out there, you just have no more room to put people in. So 4 out of 6. That means you're on average. Each session is 4 people, and you can. So you're not going to freak out if you have one session with one person, if you're aware of the weekly number from usage.
So Rick is running like 8 to 10 classes a day, I think, or small groups a day. Right, 4 or something like that in the morning, 4 or something like that in the evening. And I think he might pop in a few here and there depending on the day of the week. Tim, I think, runs a similar setup. How are you setting this up? And then how does somebody come into this thing going, all right, I want to be cash flow positive when I, offer this to customers on day one? Of course, you talk about pre-sales, right? That's a important part of it, important component. Yeah. But if I'm launching this, what am I launching with? All 8 or 10 over the course of the week, and I designated a coach for that spot, and all of a sudden now I'm committing to this outlay of pay to these coaches, and I don't even know if I'm going to fill them. I don't know if I'm going to fill those small groups.
Yeah, no, and Rick's done a really good job of kind of clarifying the rules, but we have similar. I think we have a little bit more than that, and we run our facility's a little larger, so there's several times where we'll have 2 and even sometimes 3 coaches working with 6 people at once. So it's kind of a nice scene to walk through and see 3 groups of 6, 3 coaches, 6 people per session. It's busy, it's bumping, it's nice. Now that there's challenges to that because there's complexities to that. There's complexities of trainer schedules and like who do we need 3 trainers at 6 a.m. and then we don't need anyone to we don't need 3 again till 9 a.m. Right. So the way Rick has done a really good job is like it's simplifying the model. Right. So they're not starting with 4 or 5 trainers, they're starting with one person. Right. And that one person is there and they're doing all the sessions. And so it's not really as big of a deal because you're not overscheduling. You don't have all these trainers in everywhere. It's just this one person. But typically you would start at like kind of this from being in the industry. Like there's busy hours, there's 6 a.m., there's 7 a.m., right? And so it's like you start with a schedule of like 3 to 4 hours in the morning and maybe a little bit less in the evening. You fill those up first, and then as you increase the amount of clients you can maybe add more sessions to the calendar. But you have to take like the base times where people are doing personal training and start with those hours. And that's why a pre-sale is so effective, because a pre-sale allows you to open with a good number of members. I mean, so I own a marketing agency called KISS Marketing. It's a digital marketing agency based in San Antonio, Texas. And we have 14 full-time employees down there, like real people going to a real office doing real work, not outsourcing everything overseas. And we have run all of the pre-sales for Alloy. And Will Matheson, my business partner that runs that company, they've been doing a phenomenal job of opening. Now, it's not just us. The pre-sale is about, there's a digital component to the pre-sale, and there's a whole strategy behind spend and everything like that. But then there's a grassroots strategy too, right? There's internal and external marketing that you're going to do inside. There's generating referrals from the people that you do get. There's community events and things like that. So I think it's a really strong digital strategy coupled with getting the pre-sale, coupled with a really strong community-based strategy, and that tends to do really well on the pre-sale side.
How long are you doing pre-sales for?
I believe it's around 3 months. I know it tweaks and changes a lot in terms of how many days, so I don't want to give a definitive answer to that. Will my business partner would know better. He's kind of on the ground floor of all that, but I believe 90
and
days.
You take a
kind of leading.
You take
up
a payment
to it.
down. I mean, we used to do this we didn't do pre-sales for small group ever. It was always pre-sales for membership. And then, we take a payment initiation fee or whatever down. And then when the gym opened, we would start their payments. We would do that for personal training as well. We might take like a small payment down for PT, for privates. And then when the gym opened, but yeah, again, I mean, I was early in the game and it was all one-on-one. So with that being said, like the other piece that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, there's two other pieces. One, we're going to go into the psychology a bit, and the emotional factors that have a play in this whole thing. And then the other is software, how you manage this with software, because one of the other components, as you know, I have a software company, and that play with the coaches, what I find is sometimes coaches want to have their semi-privates, okay, and it may not be in the model that you run, but they want to have their semi-privates in a format that allows them to communicate as a unit with their clients to find a time that works with them instead of these blocks, right? So you treat it like a private session where you're having back and forth dialogue within your group, and then you pick a time and you guys work together instead of having a block like a large group class in your set and it's always fixed. So what do you find works best for that model?
So the way we structure it is, because you want to communicate the high value of every hour and every session they get, because it's like you're not just, you want to separate yourself from large group, right? And so it's not like this free for all. We never offer unlimited. There's limited number of hours on the schedule. And so we communicate that in the very beginning. And what we do is we tell them that they have to schedule their sessions beforehand, and whatever software that you have, what we use. And again, far away from the
The tech side.
the thing at my gym, but they basically are 6 spots per time slot. And so what a client will have to do is put their name into a certain spot. And what I like about that is it kind of brings a little bit of a scarcity to each session. And so my wife is a client at my gym, and she's always at the 6 a.m. session. And she has girlfriends that go with her, to the 6 a.m. session, and that is like their thing. And a lot of times she'll get texts at night being like, "Hey, the 6 a.m. is full. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, can you get me in?" And then they're like calling Vanessa at like 11:30 at night, like trying to get her into the next session. And she usually kind of moves something around or can do it, but it kind of keeps people, a little bit on their toes. No one wants to go to the restaurant that's got like, 90% open tables. Like, you want to kind of go to the restaurant where you got to wait a little bit and it's bustling and people are
Yeah.
in and out of there. And it's like, so I think that model, like having them having to have to schedule, and put there being a limit to each session, is a very, very helpful thing for compliance, for membership.
So speaking of compliance, right now, this is where the psychology part comes in. I had someone say to me the other day that they had to get rid of a specific class, right? It was a small class. They didn't call it small group. I think they were doing something different, but they always had like 6 people in there. But over time, it started emptying out, and it had nothing to do with the coach, had nothing to do with the instruction or how things were done. It had everything to do with one particular client who was, the hygiene was just like, it was bad. It was rank. You didn't want to be in there. So all of a sudden you had other clients leave, right? They don't come in anymore. So how do you match up? Because all of this stuff is great. You can give the formula and say, here is the playbook. Here is it's all box stuff for you. Just go implement this. But then at the end of the day, you have the dialogue and the emotional, psychology between the customer and the coach, and how the coach can like read people, and then how the clients are reading each other, right? Because kind of the whole purpose of small groups. Like people don't want to be in the big group after COVID, right? They don't want private, and they want to save money because of the economy. So they still yearn for this connection, and so small group like just nails it. But it's not going to nail it if you don't have the right coach that can be there, and then be able to read the client. So how do you handle that?
So, well, I'll first address the smelly person thing. And I think if you've been in business long enough, you've had this happen. And I remember that it's really awkward, to have to, but you have to have the conversation. The worst thing to do is what this person did, which was
Let it
let it
go.
just
Yeah.
die. Yeah, that's not the right strategy. You have to address things like, you get better at things through to taking action and doing hard things. And that is a hard thing to do. And I'll never forget, we had a person that had that same thing. And this was a longtime member. This was a distinguished man in our community, a lawyer, like a very successful person that I was a 29-year-old kid at the time. Like, who was this punk ass kid? Like, right. And so I brought him into my office. It was more of a stand up meeting than a sit down. I didn't have him sit down. I kind of just like kind of had him pop in, and because I didn't want to do it out in the gym and have people overhear the conversation, but you also don't want to be like, hey, come into the office,
close the door,
sit down with me, and like, so it was a little bit of a tweener. In that, and that was strategic. But I basically just told him the truth, and I said that there's we've gotten several complaints about the smell and blah blah blah, and I told him, gave him some options of what he could do, and he said to me, he's like, well, I guess I shouldn't wear the shirt that I ran in the night before to the gym, and I was like,
that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe don't wear that shirt anymore. Just put on a clean shirt. And he's still a client.
That's good.
And that was a decade ago.
Good.
That was a decade ago, and he's still a client. It
wasn't the lucky football underwear that he left in his life.
It was a dirty shirt. He was coming in a dirty. He didn't smell. His shirt smelled because he went and had it put on a dirty shirt. And so we just realized it together, and I just helped him figure it out.
That's good. You got lucky on that one.
I got lucky. I totally lucky, right? Like that. Yeah. There's the only skill I think I did well was like the whole office thing, and like not like, but yeah, I definitely got handed one that time. But those are things that I think the psychology standpoint, as from a business owner, and I think that's what you're asking about, from more of a business owner psychology. So Tony Robbins, I know you're a fan. He has a line. One of my favorite lines is, the number one chokehold on a business is the psychology of the owner. And I think that is like so true. And, there's only so much business knowledge and technical things that you can learn and know. At the end of the day, it comes about your own mind and how you navigate problems and challenges. And I think that one of the things that I love so much about owning a business is that it is built in personal development. You are not getting out alive without growing as a person. And so these things like having a smelling person, these things like going through a pandemic, these things like having a trainer quit and take a bunch of things, all of them is challenging your own mind and how your ability to control your emotions. And that's something I talk about a lot. I'm a big fan of Stoicism. I think that your life is made, your life is shaped by the decisions that you make. And most of the time we don't make good decisions when our emotions are kind of through the roof. And so the steadier that you can train yourself to be, the better decisions you'll make, and likely the better business that you'll have, and the more money you'll make, and the better life you'll have. So I think a lot of it is about the management of emotions. There is no way to prevent every problem in business. It's just not happening. There are things you can do to reduce the risk of these things, for sure, and you should. But there is no way to eliminate them. And one of my favorite authors is a guy named Robert Ringer. I don't know if you've read any Ringer stuff.
No, I haven't. I'll have to look him up.
Phenomenal. But it's like, problems are part of the living experience. You are not going to have a life without any problems. You are not going to own a business without having any problems. And so you just better get used to dealing with it and navigating it and getting better at working through it and solving them and managing your own emotions through the whole.
And that's the thing about coaches. That's why guys like you exist. Is you don't learn this stuff in school, right? I mean, that
No,
they don't teach these.
There's not a course on the smelly guy talk.
No, they don't. They don't have
there's
it.
not.
Yeah.
There's not a course on that.
How do I deal with this? Oh shit. So
yeah.
And the other thing is like as you go through and like you know, you may or may not have recognized this, but some of the stuff that you talk about in your books and the talks that you give is communication is in parallel to what John Maxwell has recently written. He just came out with a book. What was the name of the book? He just
I don't know. Yeah, I saw.
Yeah, but he talks about what people see, what people hear, and then what people say, right, or what people understand. And what people see is the stuff that it's all about how you perceive, right, my interaction with you, or how you might perceive my interaction with somebody else. You might be considering training, but then you see the way that I act with others, and then you assess me. All of a sudden, there's a judgment on me, right? And then it's what you hear. You know, if you look at the levels of what has most value, what you hear someone say, right? My tone of voice, whether that, you know, is encouraging to you or you want to walk away, and then what I'm actually saying and what you're understanding, which has typically the lowest value. So it's all that nonverbal communication. And I know that a lot of people struggle with that communication. Do you see that at all in your business? Like,
yeah. Well, the biggest thing is too, it's like from a business standpoint, especially as people start to grow their companies and they have employees that are like non-personal trainer employees, and they hire a director of marketing or a salesperson or a general manager, and like they're in charge of leading that person. And so one of the most important things that you can do is have clarity on what you want and how you want things accomplished. And I think that a lot of business owners, they hire somebody and they expect them to know exactly what to do, and they don't give them any kind of written documentation on how to do it. There's no metrics around it of what success looks like. And they're just like, all right, yeah, you're the salesperson now, go have at it. And that's a form of communication. It's like being clear. There's a line called "Clarity is kind" that my friend Joe Hashi, who's our head business coach in the mastermind, he always talks about that. Clarity is kind. It's kind to people when you're clear on what you expect. It's kind to people when you reinforce when you inspect what you expect. You're being kind to people. And a lot of times people will think like, oh, I don't want to do that, they're going to think I'm checking up on them or anything. No, that's the kind and real thing to do as a business owner, to be able to do this thing. So you're 100% right. Communication is super important. We all need to be learning how to do it much better. It's a work in progress, for me. But even also in marketing too, from communication standpoint, I talk a lot about marketing, and there's, if you confuse people, you're going to lose them. And so this communication piece in marketing, but even in leadership and management is huge. And so I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate your time today. I mean, you've gone through so much. I mean, I think if somebody just listens to this, they'll at least get the framework on how they need to build out a small group personal training piece. By the way, small group, semi-private. What do we go with? What is it?
Small group.
Okay.
Without getting into the whole thing, it's like I've been on like 100 podcasts in the last 3 months, and like every person has asked that question, because I think I blow it up in the book a little bit. I guess the best way is read the book to know my shtick with semi-private, that term, which makes no sense at all. But anyway,
yeah, good. Vince, awesome to have you on, man. Where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you? Because I'm gonna put it all in the show notes.
They just go get the book for free. Go smallgrouppersonaltraining.com. I guess you'll probably put a link in the show notes, but either click the link in the show notes or go to smallgrouppersonaltraining.com. You can just get a free copy digital copy of the book. Hopefully it's helpful. There's all kinds of little calls to do some stuff with me throughout the book. So if you see something that piques your interest, love to meet you and chat with you in person. But hopefully the book just helps you get to the next level.
Any events coming up?
Yeah, we have our mastermind in San Antonio, Texas, coming up, and that's where KISS Marketing is. We have one meeting a year. We do a meeting at the KISS headquarters. So that's the next one. It's going to be on brand hypertrophy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's gonna be great, and I'm pitying the people that don't understand what hypertrophy is.
It's
so
you're not doing brand hyperplasia.
No, but it's all about building a brand without paying for it.
I love it. I love it. Everyone, you heard it here. Vince Gabriele, he's got the answers. And if you listen this far, you've probably taken a few notes. And of course, everything's always in the show notes. I really appreciate everyone listening in. You feel like somebody can get something out of this, right? Share it with them. All right. Always share. Kids always say sharing's caring. And again, catch you guys on the flip side.